My wife looked me in the eye and said, "Your parents aren't welcome for Christmas." I chose her over them. But months later, I discovered the real reason behind her ultimatum, and it broke everything we'd built. Christmas has always meant home to me. I'm 34 now, but when I think of December, I still see Minnesota porches buried in snow, the blue light from the front yard reindeer, and a fir tree that made the whole house smell like the woods. My mom's cinnamon rolls came out of the oven before the sun. My dad sang along to carols even when no music was playing. It wasn't perfect. It was just ours. That's what made it feel strong. When I met Emily, she slipped into those winters like she had always been there. She and my mom stood shoulder to shoulder, dusting powdered sugar over cookies. She held up my dad's worst sweater and laughed until she had to sit down. Back then, she said our family had holiday magic. I believed her, and I believed us. This year was different. It didn't arrive as a blow. It drifted in like cold air under a door. My mom's calls went to voicemail. My sister's texts waited for days. Emily said work and errands were piling up. She kept her voice even, but something in it had less light whenever my parents' names came up. I told myself it was a busy season. 2 weeks before Christmas, I mentioned that my parents were planning to stay the weekend like they always did. I was in the kitchen pouring coffee. Emily was crossing the room with a stack of clean dish towels. She stopped and set them down. "No," she said. "Not this year." I laughed a little, like she had tried a dry joke. "What do you mean? It's Christmas. They're not welcome in this house," she said. "Not anymore." The words felt heavy in the space between us. The kettle clicked off. A clock ticked. Outside, a plow went past and left the street quiet again. I reached for something soft to say and came up empty. "Emily, they've been kind to you," I said. "What happened?" She didn't look away. "Your mother crossed a line at Thanksgiving." I remembered the day. The table was crowded. My sister dropped a serving spoon. The green beans were a little overdone. My mom, who tries to keep control when things tilt, commented on standards while she stirred the gravy. The sentence was clumsy. I had winced. Then the moment moved on. Or I thought it had. "What did she say to you?" I asked. "She told me I'd never measure up," Emily said. She said it right to my face. I am not going to sit here and pretend it's fine. I won't do it anymore. I tried to replay the evening to find the exact spot. I could not hear those words in my head. I could hear something like them, an edge that my mom doesn't always catch in time. I told Emily that. I told her we could clear it up. I said my mom would apologize. I said she probably didn't mean it the way it sounded. "I'm done explaining how things make me feel," Emily said. "I'm done standing in my own kitchen and being judged." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was set. The decision had already been made somewhere I had not been invited. I looked at the dish towels, folded into thirds, and thought about how much of a life is built out of small, careful stacks. The kind you try not to knock over. For the rest of the evening, we moved around each other like people in a narrow hallway. I wiped the counters. She loaded the dishwasher. The house was so clean you could hear every small sound. I sent my mom a text that said we would talk tomorrow. I didn't press send. I opened our front closet and touched the sleeve of my dad's spare coat that he keeps here for snow. I closed the door again. When we went to bed, Emily turned off her lamp right away. I lay there and stared at the dark window. The streetlight lit the edges of the blinds. It felt like some part of December had stepped outside and shut the door behind it. I wanted to reach for her hand and also for the phone on my nightstand. I did neither. The wall was already up. I just hadn't felt it until now. The next few days felt heavy. We moved through the house like it belonged to someone else. I kept waiting for her to change her mind, for a soft moment where she'd say, "Let's try again." But it never came. Instead, she grew quiet whenever I mentioned my family. I could see her building distance in small ways, taking longer walks, working late, closing herself off. I tried to hold on to hope, but every silence seemed louder than words. I needed peace, so I reached out to my mom. I told her what Emily had said, how tense things had become. Mom didn't argue or defend herself. She just sighed in that way she does when she's trying not to cry. "Honey, I'll apologize if it helps," she said softly, "even if I don't fully understand what I did. But she has to meet me halfway." That sentence gave me a bit of light. Maybe this could be fixed. Maybe all they needed was a small bridge. That night, I told Emily. "She's willing to apologize," I said. "She just hopes you'll meet her halfway." Emily turned from the sink, eyes tired. "Halfway? I've been walking on eggshells since the day we got married. Your mother never liked me, Liam." She makes these little comments, always finding ways to remind me I'm not enough. I'm not spending another Christmas pretending everything's fine in my own house. Her voice cracked, not loud, but final. And then came the words that broke the air between us. "It's them or me. Choose." I stood there, not sure if I'd heard her right. I opened my mouth, but no words came. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, thinking of every Christmas before, my dad singing along to the radio, my mom trying to hide presents under blankets in the trunk. I thought about Emily, too, the version of her who once laughed with them, who said our family made her feel safe. Where had that warmth gone? When the first light came through the curtains, I sat on the edge of the bed and knew what I had to do. It didn't feel like a choice. It felt like giving something up to keep something else from breaking. I stepped into the hallway and called my parents. The ring felt endless. Mom answered, her voice gentle. Hey, sweetheart. I told her they shouldn't come. It might be best to stay home this year. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then a quiet, okay, sweetheart. We understand. The call ended, and I sat there with the phone still in my hand, staring at the wall. The silence in the house spread like fog. Christmas morning came. The tree was lit, gifts stacked neatly below, but it all felt wrong. No scent of cinnamon rolls. No laughter echoes through the kitchen. Just quiet. Emily handed me coffee, smiled a little, but it didn't reach her eyes. We opened presents slowly, like it were a chore. I tried to laugh when she did, but every sound echoed in the stillness. Every gift felt heavy. The couch where Dad usually sat looked too empty. The space beside the tree, where Mom used to hum carols, was just a corner of the room now. When we sat at the dining table, I saw 3 empty chairs that didn't belong. My chest ached. I told myself I'd done the right thing, that choosing my marriage was the mature thing. But it didn't feel right. It felt like something small inside me had gone missing. That night, when Emily went to bed, I stayed by the tree. The lights blinked in slow rhythm, reflecting off wrapping paper scattered across the floor. I whispered into the quiet, Merry Christmas, Mom. For a moment, I thought I heard her voice from memory. We love you, sweetheart. We're proud of you. But the room stayed still. Just me and the blinking lights. I didn't know it then, but that decision, the one I made half asleep, trying to keep peace, had already started a crack I wouldn't be able to close. Something in our marriage shifted that day, and no amount of garland or gifts would ever cover it. The weeks after Christmas felt strange, like walking through a house that wasn't fully mine anymore. The tree stayed up longer than usual, lights still twinkling, but the warmth behind them was gone. Every time I passed it, I thought about how quiet the holiday had been. No music, no laughter, just 2 people pretending silence was peace. Emily, on the other hand, seemed lighter. She cleaned the house top to bottom, replaced old decorations with new ones, and invited her friends over for a New Year's brunch. She called it a fresh start. She smiled more, but it wasn't a kind of joy I recognized. It felt more like relief. I told myself I'd made the right call. Marriage, after all, is supposed to be about unity. You leave your parents, build your own home, and stand with your spouse. That's what I'd been taught. So, I convinced myself I was doing what a husband should. I pushed aside the ache and focused on the idea that maybe time would fix the distance. But time didn't heal anything. Instead, it revealed small fractures, moments where things didn't sit right. Emily started going out more often, sometimes for weekends. She'd pack a small bag, say she was visiting a friend or helping her cousin with errands. I wanted to believe her, and for a while, I did. Still, something deep down wouldn't quiet down. Each time she left, I felt like the walls in the house grew taller, like I was slowly being boxed in by the choices I'd made. When I brought it up one night, softly, trying not to sound accusatory, she didn't hesitate. You're just paranoid, she said, brushing me off. We needed boundaries, Liam. You chose me. Now let's move on. Move on. That phrase hung in the air long after she said it. I wondered if she truly believed that you could move on from family, from tradition, from the very people who built your sense of love. I missed them, my parents, the noise, the way they made everything feel whole. I missed who I was around them. I didn't feel like that version of myself anymore. So, one afternoon, without overthinking it, I called my mom. I expected her to hesitate before answering, but she picked up right away. Her voice carried the warmth I'd been missing. Hey, honey, she said, almost cautiously, like she didn't want to step on any landmines. We talked for nearly an hour. About work, about the snow back home, about small, ordinary things that felt extraordinary because I hadn't heard her laugh in months. Not once did she mention Christmas or what had happened. She just listened, asked about me, and before hanging up, said, I'm proud of you, honey. I know you're trying. That one line sat with me long after the call ended. I know you're trying. Trying for what, though? A marriage built on an ultimatum? The guilt I'd been pushing down started to rise again. I replayed the moment I told them not to come, how Mom's voice cracked when she said she understood. I had thought I was being loyal to my wife, but now, sitting alone in that quiet house, it felt more like I'd betrayed something sacred. Emily didn't seem to notice the change in me. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. She kept her distance, always moving, always busy. When she was home, endlessly scrolling. Anything but talking. And somewhere between the empty chairs at Christmas and the long silences that followed, I realized what I'd truly lost wasn't just my parents. It was connection. The very thing that made our home feel alive. Still, I told myself I'd keep trying. That somehow, with patience and kindness, we could mend the gap. I didn't know that the truth behind her anger was waiting just ahead, and it was nothing like what I'd imagined. That one sentence, "I'm proud of you, honey. I know you're trying," echoed in my head for days. It followed me around like a quiet voice asking questions I didn't want to answer. The tension in our house didn't fade. If anything, it grew quieter and heavier, like dust settling on everything. Emily still kept herself busy, spent weekends helping or visiting, and brushed off my attempts to talk. I tried to focus on work, chores, anything to stop my mind from circling the same empty thought. I missed my family. Then one Thursday evening, my phone rang. It was my sister, Anna. We hadn't spoken much since Christmas. The second I heard her voice, I knew something was wrong. "Hey," she said softly. "Did you know Mom's been in and out of the doctor lately?" I froze. "No. What?" "She's been having blood pressure issues. Stress, mostly. She's been trying not to worry you." Anna paused. "She thinks she lost you, Liam. You should come home." I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, unable to move. "She thinks she lost you." The words stung more than I expected. After everything my parents had done for me, I'd made them feel like they didn't matter. When I hung up, I turned to Emily, who was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. "Did you know about this?" I asked. She didn't even look up. "About what?" "Mom's been sick. Anna said she's been calling, leaving messages." "Why didn't you tell me?" Emily shrugged. "Because it would have just made you run back to them. I'm not doing that again." For a second, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just the words. It was how calm she sounded, like she'd already decided what parts of my life I was allowed to know. Something inside me went still. "This isn't about boundaries anymore," I said quietly. "It's about control." She didn't reply, just kept scrolling. That was the moment I knew I had to leave. Not forever. At least, I didn't think so then. I just needed to see my parents. I needed to remind myself what it felt like to be part of something that didn't come with conditions. So I packed a small bag, grabbed my keys, and drove 3 hours through the falling snow. The highway stretched out like a long thought I couldn't finish. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, the porch light was on, the same one Dad always left glowing during winter storms. I stood there for a moment before knocking. The door opened, and Mom just stared. Her eyes filled, and before I could say a word, she stepped forward and hugged me. No anger, no questions, just a simple, steady embrace. Dad came from behind her, placed a hand on my shoulder, and gave a small nod. We didn't talk much that first night. We just sat at the kitchen table, drinking tea, letting the quiet feel familiar again. The next morning, over breakfast, I finally asked, "Mom, did you really tell Emily she wouldn't measure up?" She set her mug down, eyes soft. "No, sweetheart. I told her she reminded me of myself when I was younger, stubborn, proud, and too scared to ask for help. She took it the wrong way." I tried to explain, but she didn't want to hear it. I nodded, staring into my cup. That sounded like my mom. Maybe blunt, but never cruel. Then Mom hesitated. "There's something else you should know." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "Before you two got engaged, Emily came to see us. Alone. She asked for a large sum of money to help you both start your life. We told her we couldn't do that. It wouldn't be right. Since then, she's been distant. I didn't want to bring it up because I knew you loved her." For a long moment, I didn't move. The room felt different, colder, sharper. Pieces started clicking into place. The sudden coldness, the resentment, the wall she built between us and them. It wasn't just pride. It wasn't just a misunderstood comment. It was something deeper, something tied to shame. I sat there, listening to the faint hum of the fridge, thinking about how love can twist when hurt turns into bitterness. And in that moment, I knew things at home were about to change again, this time for good. The drive back home the next morning was long and quiet. Snow flurries brushed against the windshield, but my thoughts were louder than the weather. Every mile I passed made the truth sink deeper. This entire time, it hadn't been about a single comment or misunderstanding. It was resentment, hurt pride, a grudge born out of something I didn't even know existed. By the time I reached the house, the sky had cleared. The lights on the porch were still up from Christmas, but they looked out of place now, festive decorations on a home that hadn't felt festive in months. Inside, Emily was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She didn't even glance up when the door closed. I talked to my mom, I said quietly, setting my bag down. She looked up then, cautious but composed. "And I know about the money," I said. "I know what this was really about." For a second, her face lost all color. Then, just as quickly, she straightened, her tone hardening. "So what? They never liked me. They made me feel small from day one. I did what I had to do." The words hung there, flat and cold. I did what I had to do. There was no regret, no recognition of how far things had gone, just justification. And in that moment, something in me let go, not out of anger, but out of understanding. The kind that comes when you finally stop trying to fix something that doesn't want to be healed. I sat down across from her, hands clasped. "We can't keep doing this," I said softly. "It's not about choosing sides anymore. It's about trust, about the people we become when we're hurt. And right now, I don't recognize either of us." She looked at me, and for the first time in a long while, I saw something shift behind her eyes. Maybe guilt, maybe realization. She didn't argue. She just looked away. 2 weeks later, we separated. There was no shouting, no dramatic goodbye. Just boxes, a few quiet conversations, and a shared understanding that love isn't enough when it's built on secrets and ultimatums. The house felt empty after she left, but it was a peaceful kind of empty, the kind that lets you breathe again. I took down the decorations, packed away the ornaments we'd bought together, and put them in the attic. I didn't throw them out. I wasn't angry anymore, just ready to start over. When December came around again, I drove back to Minnesota. The snow was thick that year. Mom's cinnamon rolls came out just as golden as ever. Dad hummed through old carols, still missing half the words. The house smelled like pine and sugar, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like home. We didn't talk much about what had happened. We didn't need to. There were no empty chairs this time, no silence that felt heavy. Just laughter, forgiveness, and the steady comfort of family. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat by the fire with a cup of cocoa and looked at the small box of ornaments Emily and I had once picked together. They were simple, painted stars, a tiny reindeer, a glass bell, but each one carried a memory of a version of us that had tried. I didn't feel bitter. I didn't wish things had gone differently. Some stories end quietly, not because they fail, but because the people in them grow in different directions. Sometimes, the hardest part of love isn't choosing between two people. It's choosing between who you were and who you need to become. That Christmas, surrounded by warmth and peace, I realized something simple. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it just means letting go, so you can finally come home to yourself. I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.